What's up, guys? The Comics Kid 2099 here, and I've got a book that I want to talk to you guys about that I finished reading. The New Teen Titans Volume 1. It doesn't have a subtitle or anything. This came out very recently. I pre-ordered it back in March, and it just came out in like September 22nd, maybe. And so I got mine in the mail a few days after that, and it took me about a week to read it, and so now here I am talking to you about it. And I've been talking about this book quite a bit on my Facebook page, making various comments about it. Not so much review comments, but more observations. So if you haven't gone and checked out my Facebook page, go ahead and do that, and then you might, in the future, you might see me talk about something that I will later review. So in a way, it's like a sneak peek to what you'll later see on the channel. So this book collects the first 8 issues of the Marv Wolfman, George Perez run on the New Teen Titans, which their run started in 1980, and this series also started in 1980, because they started with a new issue 1. And it also collects a part of DC Comics Presents issue 26, I believe. I feel really silly. I wish I had looked that up. I think it's issue 26, so I'm going to go ahead and just look at that really quickly, and it is issue 26. And there was like 16 pages tacked onto that issue that introduced a lot of these characters for the first time. It had Cyborg, Starfire, and Raven. That was their first appearance, and it happened before issue 1. And it's a very neat issue because I really can't imagine this book not including that, because in it, it's set in the present day where Robin is about to go and stop some terrorists from blowing up a building, and then his mind, his consciousness flashes forward into the undetermined future, and he's a member of this new Teen Titans team, and he sees people that he knows, like Beast Boy, who's now calling himself Changeling, and Donna Troy, Wonder Girl, who later goes through like 2 or 3 other names in the future, and who else? Kid Flash. He knows Kid Flash. And then there's some other people he doesn't know, like Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg, and he's just like, whoa, what is going on here? The Teen Titans broke up months ago. Who are you guys? And they're all like, oh, Robin, you're just being silly. And then they have to go and fight this blob thing from another dimension, and then his mind keeps going back and forth between the terrorist plot and then the blob thing, and then eventually he's back in the present day, and then we find out Raven is over there watching him. And then in issue 1, they reference that. So way back when I pre-ordered this, I was really afraid that they weren't going to collect that 16-page story from DC Comics Presents issue 26, because it's almost a necessary prologue. It doesn't really, they mention it, but it's not like, part 1 of a storyline or anything like that, but they do mention it, and I think it would have been really strange if they hadn't included it. So I'm really glad that they did. And I should go ahead and mention that I am a huge fan of this run. I haven't read a whole lot of the run because up until recently, DC hasn't really made it very easy to read from this run. I had, before this, the Judas Contract and the Terror of Trigon. I had both of those in trade. And then other than that, DC made it just really hard to get a hold of like chunks of this run. Like they had 3 omnibuses that collected probably the first 60 to 70 issues of this run, but the first omnibus was going for like $200 used on Amazon. I remember way back when it first came out, or not immediately when it first came out, I was going to order it, and I was like in the process. I was about to order it, and then Amazon had this notice that said, this item has been recalled. We urge you not to order it. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if something's wrong, if it's like the binding or something. So I didn't order it. And then the next time I saw that omnibus, it was going for like $200, and I was like, ugh, why did they recall it? Why didn't I buy it? And so the other 2 omnibuses collecting this run, those were significantly cheaper, but Volume 1 was insanely priced, so I didn't get any of those. And then they also had the archive editions, which were hardcovers that were about this size. And in fact, I had read all of these issues before back in high school, probably about 10 years ago. And it was basically just the contents of this book with slightly nicer paper, glossier paper, and in hardcover. And this is not glossy paper. I mentioned it was either in my review of the first volume of Mike Grell's Green Arrow run, or it was in my review of a Nightwing trade paperback that collected some of the Nightwing stories from Action Comics Weekly. It was in one of those 2 reviews that I mentioned that you don't always have to have the best quality paper. Something like this, it's cheaper paper, and so the book is cheaper as a result. And honestly, I just want it collected in some way so that as a fan, I can have it all really easy for me to read. I have all these issues, almost all of them, I think. I'm pretty sure I have all of these issues in single issues, but a lot of those issues, I don't want to have to go through the trouble of taking them out of the poly bag and taking them out of the box and then putting them back in the box. This makes it a lot easier to read the issues. So I'm really glad that this has been collected. And also, I mentioned this on my Facebook page, and I know it's been like almost 5 minutes and I haven't yet gotten to reviewing the thing, but I'll get there, don't worry. I mentioned on my Facebook page that Volume 2 is already being solicited, and I've already pre-ordered mine, and I recommend that you do too. So this appears to be something that DC is going to keep doing. Probably roughly every 6 months they're going to put out a new volume, and as long as they keep doing it, I will keep buying them, because I made a video a while back saying that there are certain series from Marvel and DC that should be collected, and this was one of the big ones that I mentioned from DC. And finally, they are putting it out in inexpensive trade paperbacks, and I am super excited about that. On to the review itself. I would say this is a pretty darn good book. If you've heard a lot of the hype from this run, you might be wondering, what's it all about? Why is this such a fantastic run? Marv Wolfman, there's a foreword that he wrote back in like 96 or 98 that is collected in this book. He really put it in very succinct words. I'm not going to read it, but if you buy the book, I encourage you to read that foreword. But he said something to the effect of the way he put together the characters, where he had like Wonder Girl, Starfire, and Raven as sort of a triangle. He had Raven on one corner on the bottom, Starfire on the other corner, and Wonder Girl is kind of a combination of the two, where Raven is a pacifist who won't fight for anything, Starfire is from a warrior culture who will fight for everything and anything, and Donna is from a warrior culture who also fights for peace. And so she's kind of the happy medium between the two. And then also among the men of the group, you had Robin, Changeling, and Cyborg. And Cyborg very much had a strained relationship with his father, and that's very much a focus of his character arc in this book. And then you had Changeling, who had a strained relationship with his stepfather, but he had a good relationship with the Doom Patrol before they were destroyed in like the late 60s, I think. And then you have Robin, who's kind of sort of a happy medium, where at the time he was kind of having strained relations with Batman, and that's definitely at the forefront of his character, but it wasn't quite as strained as what Cyborg was going through, and it wasn't as wistful as Changeling's relationship with his now deceased parental figures. And so it's really interesting that Wolfman kind of played with the characters this way. He would position the characters so that they had not only paralleling arcs, but also kind of they would be conflicting as well. There would be a little bit of group conflict. And you may have noticed that a lot of the characters in this book had parental issues, and that's something that he played up in a big way, because these are teenage characters, and both him and George Paris have talked about how they hated that the original 1960s Teen Titans series was basically just an extension of the Justice League comic, and they wanted this to be something new, have its own life. They didn't want it to just be all of the sidekicks working together and be an extension of the Justice League. And so you had all these characters who, one, they're new characters. Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg did not really have any connection to the Justice League at all. They didn't, in fact. And then you had Changeling, who used to be a sidekick to the Doom Patrol, but most of them were now dead, so he didn't really count. And then you had Robin, who was a sidekick to Batman, but around this time, he was doing a lot of his own solo adventures, and Batman was as well. So they weren't really working together like they used to. So the only one in this group who was really a full-on sidekick was Kid Flash. And at the beginning of this book, he doesn't even want to be a superhero anymore. So they play with this in such a way where all of these characters, they kind of severed a connection with the Justice League. And in my opinion, that was a really bold move and a really smart move, because it makes the book have a life of its own. And that's a very crucial thing. And a lot of times you'll have these characters like the New 52 Teen Titans. When they first started, they kind of took it back to the thing where all of them have a connection to another character. Superboy is a clone of, he used to be a clone of Superman. I think now Superboy is like a time-traveling descendant of Lois Lane, I think. I don't know what's going on with Superboy. And then they have a new Kid Flash, they have Robin. So all of those characters are still they took it back to being a junior Justice League, sort of. And so I think it was really good that they took these characters and they took this team and they kind of made it its own thing, where it's called the Teen Titans, but it's not so much a group of kids who need adult supervision. They are their own characters, and I thought that was really good. what else do I need to say here? This book introduces a lot of fodder that will become very important later on down the line. It introduces Trigon, who he's kind of, if there's any big bad in these 8.5 issues, Trigon is the big bad. And they kind of deal with him, but if you know anything about the future of Teen Titans, this series, you know that he comes back in a way. And so they deal with him here, but you've also got Cyborg having to deal with his father, and that takes a few issues. Mostly it's just like 1 or 2 pages in an issue, but then there's one issue that really deals with it heavily. And then you've also got the Fearsome Five. They're set up here, and I don't know, outside of these issues, I don't know if the Fearsome Five actually are used again. I know that they were in the cartoon series, or a few of them were, so if they were in that series, they must have been popular enough that somebody thought, hey, let's use those guys in this cartoon. But outside of these issues, I'm not sure if those characters show up again in this series. And then you've got the group Hive, which it stands for something. It's kind of like AIM and SHIELD and all of those acronyms. It stands for something. I don't know what it stands for. And Hive is probably the weakest part of the book, because the Teen Titans, this group, they have just formed, and already Hive is like, we have to destroy the Teen Titans. And I'm thinking, why? All you're doing is drawing attention to yourself, and these guys haven't actually done anything to you, at least this particular group hasn't, and I'm pretty sure Hive was introduced here. They weren't like a leftover thing from the previous version of the team, so it really makes no sense why this cult would be trying to target the Teen Titans who have just formed, but whatever, that's like the weakest villain motivation here. And they also, through Hive, they introduced Deathstroke the Terminator, who is a really cool character. He's cool here. He's also in the TV show Arrow. He's really cool there. And his villain motivations are connected to Hive, but actually make a lot more sense, because he's sort of an honorable assassin, and his son was kind of just a dumb kid who wanted to kill the Teen Titans for very sketchy motivational reasons. Like, his motivations are almost as bad as the Hive. And then, spoiler alert, his son gets killed, his powers kind of burn him out, and so Deathstroke is like, well, my son took on this job to kill the Teen Titans, and he died, so I'm going to take up his contract, and I'm going to kill the Teen Titans. And so that lasts for a good 40 or 50 issues. Like, that kind of characterization of Deathstroke lasts well on up into the Judas contract. That's kind of the motivation behind that whole storyline. And I don't know how long it lasts after that, because, spoiler, eventually Deathstroke kind of becomes an ally to the Titans, and I really don't know how they kind of reconcile that with what we have here, where he wants to kill the Titans to honor his son's memory. But I would say his motivations are really good. Trigon is a demon who conquers multiple dimensions, so he's a conqueror and he's a demon, so he doesn't really need motivations beyond that. The Fearsome Five are just kind of typical bad guys, and honestly, several of them are like, hey, we don't want to target the Teen Titans. We have no reason to. We just want to steal stuff. We just want money. And so that makes sense, the fact that they would not want to cross the Teen Titans for no reason at all. But then you have characters like Simon, who kind of is manipulating this group into fighting the Titans, and Dr. Light, who for no real reason at all wants his group to go fight the Teen Titans. That doesn't really make any sense. But it deals with a lot of villains in the first 8 issues, and it sets up a lot of stuff for later issues on down the line. So I think that's really noteworthy. Usually, in a comic book today, in 8 issues, you would probably get 2 villains. You would get like a 6-issue storyline with 1 villain, and then you get the beginning of another storyline with another villain. So this sets up like 4 or 5 different groups. You have the Hive, you have Deathstroke, you have Trigon, and you have the Fearsome Five, and then there's many more characters outside of that. Like the Fearsome Five is obviously 5 characters. And this is really good at setting up a lot of stuff like that. And so, other than that, I don't really know if I have a whole lot else to say. Some of these characters, if you're familiar with them later on down the line, they may seem very unfamiliar to you here. I would say the biggest one with that would be Cyborg, where when he first starts, he's like this angry at the world, just kind of an angry teenager, and doesn't really have any direction in his life. And that's not really the Cyborg that I've come to know in later comics. And I would say, starting at the very end of this, he becomes a lot more mellow, and he becomes sort of the rational voice of reason of the group in a lot of ways. And that was how he was played in the Jeff Johns version of the Teen Titans, and that's kind of how I like Cyborg. But then again, you know, they really didn't know where they wanted to take this character, I don't think, so they had this idea of he's kind of a Frankenstein's monster type who feels like he's a freak, and then they took the character in a different direction. But I think they were still trying to find their feet, and so that's okay. This is a really good book. I highly recommend it. If you want to get into the Teen Titans, but you're looking at the New 52 stuff and you say, that looks disgusting, I do not want to touch that with a 10-foot pole, I would recommend that you buy this, because this is really where it all got started. This is it's not where it all got started. The Teen Titans existed back in the 60s, but this is where it got good, in my opinion. And so if you're looking for some good Teen Titans stuff, then this is what you want to read. And just as a side note, it is a really good time to be a Teen Titans fan right now, because if you forget the New 52 stuff, you've got this, which, as I said, is going to be coming out roughly one volume every 6 months, because the next one's coming out in April. And then you've got, in November of this year, Teen Titans Earth 1 is going to be coming out, and I'm really looking forward to that. Jeff Lemire is writing it, and the Dotsons are drawing it. I'm super looking forward to that. It looks 100 times better than the New 52 stuff. And then, sometime next year, I think, there's going to be a Teen Titans TV show on TNT. So, really exciting to be a Teen Titans fan. I'm super excited, and I don't have to feel embarrassed to be a Teen Titans fan. So I'm really excited about that. I definitely think you guys should pick up this volume. I really enjoyed it, and I think you guys would too. So that's all I had to say. I hope that you guys liked this video, and if you've read this book, I hope that you liked the book. And if you did like the video, be sure to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'm going to go ahead and end this video for now, so I will see you guys tomorrow with a different kind of review. Until then, I'll see you later. Have a great day.